I don't know. That's the answer that I got, that I would have been at fault.
That sounds like
Where's your packet? It's right here.
these two questions. Or
You know,
chief
because
question.
there's no markings.
See this again?
He has a question about,
I gotta sit down.
well, you want to describe that? Well, maybe we should ask.
Yeah, well, when
after.
we get to talking.
Yeah.
But I don't know the answer to that, but I've been asked again. And then the other lady asked me about the lights. Who handles the traffic lights? That's the state. Is that right? The state handles the state highway traffic lights.
Thesis?
Yes.
And I says, we have a contract with them, but I don't know if it deals with that.
Just out of curiosity.
With how they regulate the stop. They're saying up there on 11th Street, this lady that called me, she says, on 11th Street, you just sit there for 30 minutes before the light changes. No cars coming or nothing.
No.
In Colorado, they got little cameras, I guess, that tell you how much traffic's coming, and then they switch. We don't.
Well, that's state highway stuff there.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying. The state highway stuff.
They adjust them and sometimes they,
I said, we can do this, we can contact the highway department, say we've got X amount of complaints.
So,
That's about as far as I can go.
we're not gonna have a quorum here, are we?
We're not?
For the workshop?
Oh,
I guess we don't need one.
no, just me and you, we'll straighten them out. How you feeling? That's the
That's
next.
good.
So he's not
Pretty good.
coming.
Okay.
He's coming via.
He's not coming.
Oh,
So you get the whole.
that's fine. And then, she's not here either?
She'd be a little late.
Oh,
So you get the whole world to yourself.
well, I got the whole thing, huh? Well, there's only two of us anyway. We can get going at 6. It's 6 o'clock.
6:02.
Yeah.
We can start, just the two of us. So we get to straighten them all
They
out.
had told me they didn't want to, but they changed their mind. Can we get it set up, or is that?
We can just talk,
Yeah.
I think.
Myra, Eric said that
Oh, thank you.
they're in contact with you.
I'm working on it.
Okay.
Okay, what is she, what is,
I just,
what would you like?
I was gonna have her call the phone number.
Okay, I'll go.
No, on there.
Oh, here comes one. Strangler. Hi, guy.
Hey, Chris.
How you doing?
During our regular meeting, there's this reporter from France. Anyway, he's gonna come to the meeting.
All I did
Okay.
is, I put it on.
yeah, I tried.
Wee wee.
Yeah.
I'll tell you to go wee wee.
Ah, what does he want to report on?
Oh, it just was wind energy
Oh,
mostly, but he's hanging around for the election, I think.
oh, is it?
The whole country's watching this election.
Oh, man.
My brother, son
Well,
lives in Missouri.
The only one they're watching is Cheney, and you don't see her getting a chance to win. I wish she would. That's my opinion. But they called me and I says, I can't vote that way, but I says, I commend her and holding her grounds.
Her grounds, I didn't send her there to do her thing, I sent her there to do my thing.
779.
Your thing isn't what she's saying?
No, no. She could have accomplished everything she's accomplishing and not been on the front
Not
row.
in service. Please check the number of trying or calling.
Well, she's just saying that if you're running, that's one thing. If you lose, you accept it with grace. You don't rob the bank.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID.
President and this, that, the other. I've lost all respect for her.
I said, I didn't.
Well, that's because you're on
I
the
gained
other
her
side.
because,
Enter
and
your
listen,
participant
she voted
ID.
93% with Mr. Trump, 93%.
Please enter the meeting
So I'm
password followed by
Okay,
pound.
well, I don't think it was, but anyway, having said
You
that,
are in the meeting.
This is for tonight.
One
just
other
much nicer for that. I ain't no shooter.
is being recorded.
sure in our 15
Okay.
pounds or
We
something.
cannot help you.
Because she
What do
didn't
you,
vote.
what do you think those people just did?
Or the person that.
Oh, that's right, I think that's right.
Yep.
Okay, our Zoom call is open.
That's right. And they're gonna find out. You watch.
Yeah.
I think he was making millions and millions with that Mar-a-Lago house, and that was the key to it, and he was keeping that, I think, so that whatever
Well-
happens, he could write a book about it.
You can think whatever, but
Yeah.
proving it's another deal.
Anything that they said at all, the whole damn shebang, all the stuff they caught him for, everything that he said,
I don't believe anything on either side of it.
and you,
No. They tell you what you want, what they want you to believe.
well, then,
We are on Zoom. I don't believe Linda or Aaron have joined, but they do plan on joining. But thank you for letting me get the phone set up, so I didn't, okay.
All right, so
Okay, let's go.
I'll call this work shop to order at 6:06, and I will turn the floor over to whoever, Chief Ward, Gwendolyn, lots of you.
I just wanted to give a quick introduction. A lot of work and discussion has gone into preparing for this work session. Did everyone get a copy of this up there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good. So what we wanted to do is give Brian and Mike the floor, and we thought we were kind of considering how to approach this, and thought it would be best to allow them to kind of go and do their presentation. And if you have questions as we're going through, please write them down. And then when they kind of finish up, then we'll turn it over to council to address any questions that you have. So I'm excited. I'm excited about this meeting to kind of get it all out there and then discuss what are the best approaches that the council would like to take. Do we want to, would the council be interested in changing ordinances at all in the way that we administer them? And so we'll just kind of jump in there. I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
I'm going to say a few words. Honorable Mayor and Council, first, thank you for being here this evening for the work session and we're early for tonight's scheduled council meeting. A lot of discussion taking place in council and outside of council about the enforcement of city ordinances. Part of our strategic plan, obviously, is beautification, and we're looking to make Rawlins a more attractive place. A number of the topics that come up involve derelict vehicles, weeds, trash, conditions of buildings, and so forth. We wanted to present material to you this evening to describe which city employees are responsible for the enforcement of which city ordinances. And then we wanted to also talk about how the city ordinance outlines the process that we're supposed to follow to enforce these ordinances. There's been some confusion even amongst ourselves about who's responsible for what. There's been a little confusion about the processes that we use to hold people accountable for the city ordinances or city law. So there's actually 4 different entities that enforce different parts, actually 5 or more entities that enforce different parts of city ordinance. Frequently what we're talking about is code enforcement, but many times other topics come in that bleed into other areas like building inspections and zoning enforcement. There are other entities within the city that do enforce things such as the police department, animal control. We're not so much focused on those topics tonight. It's mostly going to be code enforcement and building enforcement for building inspections for this evening. And I'd like to turn it over to our code enforcement officer, Brian Market.
Okay, Honorable Mayor and Council. So when we put this together, it was kind of voiced to me to put some notes together, kind of an outline, to basically give you an idea of the process that I follow in doing my individual cases and everything. We did do a focus on, specifically on nuisance, the nuisance chapter and title, because that is probably about 95% of what I come into contact with. And the process runs the same no matter which of the several items that are included in the nuisance title. So just to kind of start with, everybody got like their outline and stuff? Okay. So kind of beginning, I just want to basically, again, reiterate the titles that I'm responsible for. When I was hired under basically being responsible for titles 8 and 12. Title 5 was added at a later date when we had some different issues with businesses and liquor license issues. So what the titles that I am responsible for are Title 5, which is titled Business Taxes, Licenses, and Regulations, but specifically what I'm responsible for is liquor license compliance. Title 8 is Health and Safety, which covers garbage, refuse, nuisances, and dangerous conditions. So as you can see, that's why that's the main brunt of what I deal with, because that's pretty much just about any problem that you can think of out there usually falls under Title 8. Title 12, and then under Title 8, nuisances is by far the most time-consuming and the most complaints and everything that I get and have to deal with. Title 12 is streets, sidewalks, and public places. That, to be honest, I don't come into contact with quite as much because it's a lot. Some of those areas overlap with like zoning and stuff as far as sidewalks and roads and everything. The main part that I do come into contact with in that is during the winter, snow conditions, people moving their snow around, ice, stuff like that. That falls under that particular area. So those are the three main areas that I'm responsible for. Now moving into like a typical process. Now again, this mainly is concerned with the nuisance title. But the main thing that does run across most of the areas is the fact that no matter what the problem is, I have to begin by issuing, if I'm gonna pursue something, I have to begin by issuing a written notice. So then that in itself creates the whole time-consuming issue, because depending on how I have to issue the notice, meaning I have to do registered mail or I have to do face-to-face. I prefer not to make face-to-face contact with people unless I really have to. And then, so that kind of goes to registered mail, plus that is actually a better way of tracking it because they have to sign for it. But under registered mail, a lot of the issues that I have to send out warnings for involve property owners that are not even located in Rawlins. So once I send that warning out, they have 10 days that warning can sit in the post office until somebody comes in, signs for it, and picks it up. After those 10 days, if nobody comes in and gets it, then it gets sent back to me. So that in itself can take anywhere, I mean, you know how mail is, that can take anywhere from 10 days to 2 weeks or more just for the written notice part.
That's for the warning.
Yeah,
Can I jump in for 1 second?
sure.
Can we define what Title 8 says the nuisances are that you are responsible for? It's right here. Sorry.
Well, okay, yeah, that's, okay, so yeah, I'll get back to my outline. And for the nuisance process, the nuisance title basically encompasses abandoned derelict vehicles, junk, refuse, garbage, unsafe appliances, dangerous conditions, weed and grass, property cases, which I refer to property cases as those cases where there's multiple issues at hand, meaning you go to a property and there's maybe junk, refuse, trash, derelict vehicle, and multiple items that each in itself can be an individual case and then has to be dealt with individually. And then there's other violations that I don't come into contact with quite as much, but I mean, if you want to refer to the ordinance under section 816.020, it covers a lot of the other ones, which, I mean, there's foul offensive conditions, interfering with peace and comfort, obnoxious offensive odors, discharging of offensive matter. There's a whole bunch, but those I don't come into contact with nearly as much as the ones that I listed. So, once a reported an issue or concern comes in,
Can you talk about how you receive your complaints?
yes, I receive complaints or issues or concerns several different ways. There's self-initiated issues which I come across as I'm out in the public or pursuing other cases and everything, stuff that I see myself, and then I decide to pursue them. Direct emails to me, calls through our non-emergent dispatch number, calls and texts directly to me, meaning people that know my cell phone number have no problem trying to contact me and stuff to let me know about issues. Direct confrontation, meaning if I'm out grocery shopping, whatnot, people have no problem coming up and asking me about stuff while I'm doing that. Other city employees, meaning employees with public works or other departments, if they see stuff, they'll a lot of times let me know as they see me out in the public also, or they'll shoot me an email or something. Issues that are relayed through City Hall employees, meaning a citizen comes into City Hall, has a concern about something, talks to Nancy or one of the other ladies in City Hall, and then it gets relayed to me through the grapevine, which is a problem because a lot of times I either lose facts in that process or I just don't get enough information, and the people that they're talking to at like City Hall or whatever don't get enough information to convey to me also. So then I have to spend a lot of time backtracking and trying to find out what the actual complaint is, who the complaint was, the address, what the issue is. I mean, it bogs things down right from the get-go. The city website, meaning the report and concern, which oddly enough is probably the way that I get complaints and issues the least, and it should actually be the most. Most people, most of the complaints and concerns should be coming through that website and the report a concern application. Then through making contact with the complainants, and I think that's about it. Then once I get the concerns and issues, and they're brought to my attention, then I have to do some additional research and work right off the bat in finding information on the address, property ownership, and like that. And property ownership and finding the owners and tracking them down to current addresses or ways that I can contact them is a huge problem also.
May I jump in again?
Sure.
The process that Brian uses to investigate and follow through on complaints of nuisances as outlined in Title 8 is actually fully described in Title 8. So all nuisances have to be, the process to investigate and address that issue has to be done in a manner that's outlined in Chapter 8. And it begins on 8.16.040. It's a lengthy process. It's actually written into the city code about the process Brian needs to follow. He's going to describe that process. So a lot of times we get questions like, okay, this person has weeds that are 3 feet tall. Why can't you just issue them a citation? The answer is because we have to follow the process that's written in the city law. And it's a lengthy process. It's built to provide due process to the citizens. There's another reason. This process is lengthy, it's complicated. Some of that is out of our control, like in terms of determining who owns a property when Brian has to go to the county to find out who's paying taxes there and where do they live and is that a good address. It's not always updated. So there are things out of our control that take time. But this process generally also aligns with our belief that the best way to address these issues is to work cooperatively with the citizens and to get them to voluntarily comply. That doesn't mean that we are against issuing charges when appropriate with the police department. That's what we do. But we don't want to be in a situation where we're just issuing citations to our citizens that we represent and then kind of preying upon them and just forcing them to pay fines. If we got to a point where we had to do that, we certainly would. But there is that issue of fairness, but then there's also the issue that it's written in black and white right in Title 8, how we are required to follow a process. And I think that's what Brian's going to talk about now.
So when I get an issue or concern brought to my attention, I begin by, first off, like I said, having to do some basic research on the address, property ownership, etc. I also contact the complainant if need be to get further information. That's why that's imperative that they go through the concern system on the website, because then they should hopefully have to put all that information in there. If I don't get all that information from the get-go, then like I said, it causes me to have to backtrack, ask a lot of questions to a lot of different people just to find out the gist of what the actual concern or problem is. So then I make plans to investigate the property or whatever the issue is. And then I do sometimes have to do further research using the city or county mapping system, the GIS, to check out information on neighbors or borders, boundaries, stuff like that. Then I go to investigate and verify whether there is an actual violation or whether the problem is unfounded. A lot of times it is unfounded, or again, if I don't get all the information that I need, sometimes I'm just plain missing the issue at hand and I'm not seeing what the complainant sees. If there is a violation, then I begin the process, which the chief has been talking about, as far as how I proceed with the violation, which is covered in section 81620, which gets into the written notices and everything. So I begin to gather notes, pics, etc. for the incident and information on the property owner or occupant, because a lot of these properties are also rentals, which adds to the problem because although I can take the problem to the tenant, the person that's actually primarily responsible is the property owner. So that's where it comes back again to me being able to track down the property owner. That I can bring the attention to the tenant, but if they don't want to do anything about it, it comes back to the property owner anyway. So usually I go for the property owner first. So then I prepare the notice of violation, which is the warning letter, which has to be delivered either registered mail or person to person. Again, I usually choose to do it registered mail because there's more backing information and more documentation. And unless I really have to, I would just rather not go person to person, face to face for some of these cases. That's covered under 816-040. So then I determine if other code areas need to be involved in the situation, because there is a lot of overlap with the codes and enforcement, and a lot of properties that I come into contact with that may have weed problems or junk problems may also have building issues, dangerous building issues, in which then I decide whether I need to incorporate like Ariel, somebody else from another code department. Zoning is becoming a huge department that I'm starting to find that I need to involve a lot more also with different cases. So then I do the notice of public nuisance, which is the letter. I also.
Can you talk a little bit about what the ordinance, Title 8, requires that you put in the warning letter?
Yes, well,
And if you
you
look
should
at,
have an example.
There's an example in this booklet that we provided you. It's under the first tab. The notes Brian's reading off of are on the first page. The second page is a cleaned up, anonymized version of a warning letter that Brian sends out. The Title 8, the code, actually specifies what information he has to put into this letter. And this is an example of one of those letters.
I need to, when I do the letter, I need to, of course, have the information of the property owner. I need to include the address and also the parcel number that the county has for it to identify the property. I have to make reference to the specific ordinance or title, which, like I said, 95% of them is 816 nuisances. Then I go in, I have to give detail as to what the specific issues are, in which I back up with the warning letter with pictures also. So that way they not only get the warning letter stating what the issues are, but they get they get pictures of the property also, so that they know that I've actually physically been there and been looking, observing things, and I've got the proof right there, so they can't act like it never happened or anything.
May I, and I apologize for interrupting you.
fine.
May I jump in?
Yeah.
The pictures that Brian takes when he's initially investigating are taken from a public space like the street or the sidewalk. He doesn't actually go on the property. That would be a violation of the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. So when he takes pictures in his initial investigation that he includes with this warning letter to the property owner, those are pictures taken from a public space that is visible from the sidewalk or the street.
So then I have to also make the request of resolving the issues at hand. I have to give a date of compliance, which is really about the only thing that I change within my realm of how am I trying to word this?
Your discretion?
Discretion, yes. As far as a compliance date to give to resolve the problems. The ordinance itself states 10 days. I have been giving most property issues 3 weeks and I've actually gotten good with the properties that I've been dealing with. I've actually got good reaction from them, I think probably because of allowing some time, because with the way a lot of people work in this town, the hours they keep, and just other factors of resources to try and clean up yards and properties and everything, 10 days to me seemed a bit short. So I take it upon my discretion to actually add on to the time. And I've been getting pretty good reaction with at least getting people to try and begin trying to resolve some of the property issues. Then I have to work with them going forward once they start. But I do have to give a specific date of compliance to which, upon that date, I revisit the situation, but I've been following up all along anyway. But I revisit the situation, see what's been being done, if anything, and then either work with them further, or if nothing is being done, then that's when it has to go to the next level also.
And according to City Code, Title 8, the recipient of Brian's warning letter or his notice of violation letter has a right to appeal that letter, even though they haven't been charged yet, in this room before the city judge. So they have a right to come to municipal court just to appeal the warning letter that Brian sends out notifying them of the violations. And we have a hearing before Judge Bennett, and Judge Bennett determines if there is enough probable cause that the letter was legitimate and that the police department and code enforcement can then go forward with charging. So there's almost written into city code 2 bites of the due process apple. You know, typically when the police arrest somebody, then they get their day in court, and it's the state or the city's responsibility to prove their guilt. According to Title 8 of the Rawlins City Municipal Code, a person receiving just a warning letter has a right to a hearing before we even issue any charges. And this is an example of what I was talking about earlier, where we just can't go out and issue citations. There's built into the city ordinance multiple levels of due process, basically.
Go ahead.
I think that there are certain things that we can do right now. One is overfilling of garbage cans. For God's sakes, you don't need a 10 or 15 day notice.
Yeah,
Then the can's really gonna be full.
Actually, I have to do a written notice.
Well, if that's the case, my question to you is, what can we do for you to give you the tools to speed this up? Nothing?
I think that's going to be part of the discussion we have after Brian completes explaining his process, if that's okay.
I understand where you're coming from, and I understand what he has to do, but I guess the question that I get from the public is, well, what are they doing about this? Why come they're not enforcing this ordinance or that ordinance? And my answer is, I can sit and tell him everything that you just told us, but I guarantee you that's not gonna satisfy them. They want something done. I think that we have like maybe 2 or 3 areas that we could actually do something about. And then when it gets to have to trespass and things of that nature, I understand that there's a process to get on that piece of property.
Correct.
If that ain't the case, then I don't understand why we even have the ordinance.
Well, let's listen to everything they have to say to Barry.
I just
and then-
did.
You listened to some of it, but you didn't listen to all of it. 'cause
Well,
they're
we're
not
trying to
done
get it in the
talking.
middle, it's 6:30, it'll be 7 and we'll be done.
And
Would you continue?
We're always available to come back.
Yeah, please continue.
Okay, so I'll try and get to the point. So then at the end of the letter, I also have to put the action needed, which is obviously just a shortened idea of the plan to resolve the situation. Then I have to state that the information about that going forward about each additional day could be an additional charge, additional citation, all that. And then also I have to put the part about you have the right to request a hearing pertaining to these allegations, which is section 81650. So that's the letter, and that's basically what gets sent out for the specific property issues. I don't always do that, follow that with like situations with weeds and grass, because as I said in our meeting earlier today, I feel that is just a lesser violation, so I try to deal with that a little bit more quickly and bluntly, face to face if need be, with a door hanger if need be, something like that. And I actually, or just regular mail, which I get pretty good results. I just dealt with like 4 or 5 different properties last week, did it the same way, and all those properties have been weeded and taken care of. So by doing it that way, it kind of I didn't have to do I got by without having to do the longer version of the written warning and everything, even though I could have done it that way if I wanted to, because that's the way the ordinance sets it up.
If the citizen does not voluntarily comply, that brings the process back to the starting point, where then Brian does have to issue the warning letter and follow the procedures that are delineated in Title 8. So there are times where Brian is able to somewhat shortcut the system by seeking voluntary compliance from the citizens on things like weeds or potentially trash. Now, once again, it has to be visible from the street. We can't go onto people's private property just to inspect their yard. But when Brian does see the violation, and it's of a lesser nature, such as weeds, the hanger he was talking about is, if you flipped over from the warning letter, there's an example of that. And he has had very good success with either notifying citizens or businesses because of using this or speaking to them directly, and then they voluntarily comply. which negates the need to go through the entire process. But if they refuse to comply, then the process starts at the beginning.
I would say this, I share Dabari's frustration about getting some of these ordinances enforced. 99% of the grouchy people I deal with is because of code enforcement or the lack of, or too much, or whatever, not fair, all the things that go along with code enforcement. So as you go through these things and you see some of these processes, if we need to change what we're doing or change the ordinances to help you, is what I'm sure is what he's after,
Exactly.
what he's trying to say, that we would be more than happy to do that. But I want you to go through it also knowing that, warning people that their trash is blowing out in the street. Dogs don't know that, people should. So to have to warn them and take a lengthy process with some of these things is just absurd to me. So if we need to change our ordinances to put it to where it's more immediate, they get a warning, they get a ticket, then I think we can expect more compliance. Unfortunately, most people have to have that kick in the pants. And so anytime you're working with those, if you see ways that we can streamline that, give you better tools to work with, please work with us. Sean?
I wonder if we could put Wendy on the spot for a second because I think it's important to hear the legal perspective on this whole thing. Like why do you think it was set up so cumbersome? Is there ways that we can adjust it? What can we do from the legal perspective?
So from research that I've done, most of y'all probably know the Rawlins case. I believe the reason that our ordinances are so restrictive and slow is directly because of the Rawlins case. That is a case in which Rawlins attempted to abate a nuisance and did not go about it appropriately and lost a case in court for violation of Fourth Amendment rights of a property owner. So I think that the ordinance was knee-jerked in the other direction to make it stiffer. I also think that there's only a few tweaks we can do to continue to protect both the property rights and get anything done. One thing that I can do is I can take out that request for a hearing after the warning. That does not do anything to anybody's due process. They still have due process. But I don't believe that we can speed up any process that requires us to go into someone's property, even if it's weeds. If we cross that line of demarcation onto somebody's property, that in and of itself requires a much longer process. If it's trash blowing down the street, you don't even have to give a warning. You can give a citation because that's littering.
Exactly.
So things that are out on the street or out on the public right of way, that does not have anything to do with this whole warning thing. This is for nuisances on private property or on industrial property that does not meet our ordinance. But as soon as we have to do something where we move onto that property, there is a major due process issue that requires a lot of work.
I guess I bring to mind that I turned in a piece of property. I think the code enforcement, the police department handled it perfect. They cleaned it. A month later, they're back in the same boat and they brought all the stuff back. So we're not really gaining anything. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. How can we give you the tools so that that this doesn't happen? Once you cite somebody for whatever reason, they know that they're gonna get a ticket because you've already done it once. Well, if the next day after we give them a ticket and they start over again, and we have to wait 10 days to get on their property to get it straightened out again, it's crazy.
So is there something with that ordinance we can put in place that does not violate that, where we could just say, after the first violation, there's no warnings after that? Because to start over a process And to have to wait 10 to 14 days for a return, acknowledgement of a certified letter is ridiculous to have, especially having to start over. So I'd like to.
That is statute. There are publication and notification requirements by statute. We cannot touch those. That is not ordinance, that is statute.
So
If
they
you
could,
can't- if you
they can
cannot
go clean their,
contact-
they can go clean their property next day. Everything's good, case is closed, go the next day, process starts over on a new case.
Correct. Because Fourth Amendment property rights, search and seizure, due process, you have to give a property owner notice. If they don't live in state, you have to try to get them through certified mail. If you can't, then you have to go notify by publication, which is the same thing we have to do for our meetings and such, and it has to be run a minimum of 3 times. After that, then you have to go to court and you have to show everything that you did to try to get a hold of that person, and then you have to hope the court gives you the right to go onto that property. But that entire process is going to take you at least 2 months just to be able to set foot on that property.
So what about the case where there's people around that have lots of vehicles and they're not licensed and they're on city property? They free for the taking, or what's the deal there?
May I? Mr. Mayor, are you talking about derelict vehicles parked on public roadways?
Yes.
Slightly different situation. We don't have the same Fourth Amendment restrictions that we do with private or privately owned property. Typically, derelict vehicles on public streets are handled by the officers because it's easy to deal with. We're not dealing with a Fourth Amendment issue. Derelict vehicles on property is where Brian comes in because of the length of the process. So a derelict vehicle on the street, typically what the officers do is try to contact the owner and tell them what the violation is. A lot of times the owner, they'll run the tag, see where it comes back to, they'll check in our report writing system. They take a lot of steps to find the owner of the vehicle and speak with them. A lot of times that owner will say, can I have some time to deal with this? And the officers almost always say, yes, you have, how much time do you need? And then they'll come back and follow up. Sometimes when they can't find the owner, they leave a warning sticker on the car. They haven't actually been using the adhesive, they've been putting them under the windshield wipers. Frequently, then the notice that they leave says, please contact the police department, your car can be towed within 24 hours for violating whatever. Typically, they get back in touch with us and ask what they have to do to rectify the situation. They're given those instructions, and that happens. There have been cases where, I know of one case where this car was had dead tags, flat tires, weeds growing under it on a public street. The officer knocked on the door, made a phone call, made attempts to contact the owner, which is above and beyond what they're required to do, but they do it anyway. Left the notice, in that case, stuck it on the window of the car. Came back later and found that the notice had been scraped off, and 5 days, not 24 hours, but 5 days later, the car was towed. So typically, the patrol officers handle derelict vehicles on public roadways because we don't have the Fourth Amendment issue we have with private property.
What about, there's businesses like down in the industrial area that have lots of that's going on down there?
So what we've learned with that is, it seems like first glance that that's a derelict vehicle issue. Turns out that it's also a zoning issue under Title 19. If these are businesses, they could be required to have a state permit or license that would allow them to have the vehicles on their property as part of the course of their business. So we found that in dealing with some of those businesses with lots of vehicles on the property, it's not as clear cut where it's a derelict vehicle issue. It's more a licensing, zoning, or permitting issue, which falls under Title 19, which falls under the jurisdiction of Lou Lascano. So,
But now, wait a minute, there's vehicles down there that have no axles under them that are sitting on the public street. That's not a...
well, they're not on the public street, they're on the private property adjacent to the public street.
Aren't they on city
I've
right
been-
away?
I've been down there and they're all on private property off the roadway. At least they were when I went down.
Isn't that an easement through there?
Once again, easement, if it's part of private property, it's a Fourth Amendment issue. It's not the same as on a public roadway, okay? So, but if they're properly licensed,
But they're not.
we don't know.
They're not.
Right, we don't, we're looking into that right now, and we realize that it's now not just a derelict vehicle issue, it's a Title 19 issue. So Brian is working with Lou. It's very, these are complex issues.
Sure.
They're not as
Yeah.
clear cut as they seem at first glance.
And Blaine, you had something?
Yes, sir. We have done some research on it, because when it came out, just exactly what you're saying, there's properties that have so many different vehicles that are like, okay, what are you using those vehicles for? Are they just sitting there, this, that, and the other? So the research that we've done, Ariel and I have, is we looked up and we found out that YDOT is in charge of what's considered a salvage/junkyard, okay? There's a lot of different things that come down to what are you doing with those vehicles. If you're utilizing them for parts and you're reselling them, then it's not considered a salvage yard before, and you have to have special permits for that.
Right.
Okay,
If you
so
have
what-
more than so many cars, you
Yes,
have to have
sir,
a
yeah.
junkyard permit.
There's a 10 acre, on a commercial lot, there's a 10 acre issue as far as like, what the salvage yard can have as far as distance wise. But I have not got a hold of anybody from YDOT because I want their specific regulations that cover that. And at that point, we can definitely go to zoning and say, okay, you've got 100 cars out here, okay, in this big lot, and you're also utilizing them for this, that, and the other. You have to have a state permit for this. If you don't, then you're in violation and you actually are required to get rid of all those vehicles. So that's what we're looking at right now. It's kind of a big undertaking, if you will, but we have started digging, so we're hoping that we can get, some conclusive.
I'm really familiar with those junkyard
Okay, yes,
laws,
sir. Okay.
so
Yeah.
I understand how they all intermingle, but they don't give anybody protection to do what they're doing there.
And
I can
that's
tell you
exactly why I
that.
wanted to get the state statute so that we can say, yeah, by the way, you are in violation of this, and now you're just basically stacking up cars on a private property, which goes to enforcement.
Councilman Martinez?
What's that? It does, yeah, zoning will definitely play a part in that, but you have two of them that'll work together as far as how we can deal with the situation.
Well, we were talking, I'm listening. The mayor told me to listen, I'm listening. We went from Title 8 to Title 19, back to Title 8. You see, when we discussed this before, and I would bring up something, they'd say, well, that's a Title 19, okay. And then we'd talk and say, well, it could be a Title 8. What's the difference between, I understand Title 8's a nuisance ordinance. Title 19 is more of a zoning ordinance, is that correct?
So, hey, Chief, can I answer that one for you, or not?
Yes, please.
Okay. Do you want me to stand up? Okay, I'm sorry. I'll stand up. The difference between, they actually, like I said, they kind of come congruent, okay? The situation goes where it is a nuisance if it falls under the code enforcement. If they have all this, obviously these vehicles together, right, and they're not permitted for it, then it becomes a zoning issue where if you're zoned for commercial, you're zoned for this, that, and the other, but you don't have the permit for it, then it goes back to code enforcement. And that's how those two kind of work together. So, I mean, they do have something to do with each other. So if, just say the mayor has a huge salvage yard and he's permitted by the state, it no longer comes under like code enforcement. That is specifically, he's zoned for that, he's permitted for that, so he's okay.
Well, and you have to comply with both laws.
You do, and that's why I said,
And
that's why they kind of.
And that's why they mesh.
Yeah, that's why, and hopefully I explained that correctly to you, but I know it's not always the answer we want to hear. It's like, we want that stuff, we want it taken care of.
A person has 4 vehicles in the backyard. Is
Different
that a
story.
nuisance or is that a Title 19?
No, that is.
It's a nuisance.
That's a nuisance.
Title 8.
Yep.
Okay, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
because remember, that's a residential property.
Right.
That is required to have this, they need to
And
have
that's-
tags that are correct, they
okay.
need to have.
So the two differences is there's industrial site, that's
Right.
over here.
Yeah,
Commercial and
We're
residential
talking
versus
about-
commercial versus
I guess I'm
residential.
more concerned with the residential areas.
Right.
I just want everybody to be treated fairly.
100%.
That we don't
That's
go
why I
after
said, that's
this
why we're
guy and
doing
have
such an
him move
in-depth
his
look at it,
car
because
and
I
allow
think there
this
are-
guy to have 15 cars and not do a thing.
Right, I think there are some
Those
people
are the
that
things
maybe
that
get
bother
away
me.
with something that they need to be.
And it
more
happens a lot.
specifically permitted for.
I give credit to the police department, to the code enforcement. They removed a bunch of, they're probably not junk to the person that has them, they're probably important. But they had them remove them so that a month later they could bring some different stuff in. Now we're having to go through the whole
The whole
system
process
again.
again, that's correct.
We're never gonna get this town clean if that continues, never. It's
One
just
of our-
like that weed ordinance, you're never gonna get.
One of the points to our presentation
Are we-
tonight was.
Go ahead, you're fine,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Was to describe to you, our elected leaders, the processes that are outlined in the law, and to describe who's responsible for what. One of the closing points that we were very interested in making was recently, due to our looking into situations of derelict buildings, those different entities that enforce different parts of the municipal code have begun working together a lot closer. So Brian and Ariel started working together on derelict buildings because some of the issues involved with them fall under code enforcement in terms of trash and so forth. But some of the issues with these buildings fall under building inspections in terms of broken windows, broken doors, roofs that are sagging, and so forth. So Brian and Ariel started working together, and at the same time that happened, we also realized, okay, well, fire inspection needs to be involved. Title 19 zoning under Louisiana needs to be involved. And these four entities are now working together, and our hope is that as Brian goes out to look at something for a derelict vehicle and realizes, okay, there's also a zoning issue here. He calls up Lou, and Lou comes out and joins him, and they look at it together to address the different aspects of it that fall under what they're responsible for. So they are starting to work together very closely, and that's the direction that we're moving in, and we wanted to let you know that as well.
Well, I want you to know that one of the reasons we called this workshop is so we have a better understanding. And I think myself, I've gained a better understanding of what you're up against. But I also have to tell you that, you know, if we cannot enforce the rules and laws that we've made, then we need to do away with them or figure out a better way to enforce them. So I'm not looking at this as it's your fault or my fault or whatever. It's a what can we do to either get the people off the hook for you know, not enforcing things that are unenforceable. I mean, fix that problem as well as get some of the regulations out there that make common sense. You know, the derelict vehicles, the weeds, the trash. Oh my God. I'll tell you what, I drove around this last couple of weekends with trash on, just looking for trash. There are so many yards completely full of trash. Oh my God, I thank the Lord they're not my neighbor. That's all I got to say. I got better neighbors.
And our
Sean?
purpose today was not to make any excuses, but just to explain the
Sure.
ground look of the landscape that we have to operate within.
A good example, today's meeting, I discussed a person that brings a carcass, a vehicle, nothing, no motor, no windows, no trunk, no hood, sets it on the yard, in the middle of the front yard, and pounds on it every day, and the guy probably means well, he's trying to make himself a car. Is that okay, or is it not? And if it's not, so when the residents call me again on it, I can say, no, you can go ahead and buy any car you want and just stick it on your front yard. Is that what we want? And if we don't, then we as a council need to come up with some type of an ordinance saying you can't do that, or you can.
Another important aspect to this, which is relative to every level of government in this country, is the allocation of our limited resources. Right? We will not have, there is no jurisdiction out there where the police chief will say, I got enough cops, I'm good. I can say the same thing about code enforcement. So in government, we always have a limited supply of our resources, and we have to apply them where we get the most benefit and the most effect. And that's how we do it. Now, we can't pick and choose the complaints that we receive. We have to address them all. But we do have to prioritize, and we do have to look at basically the best allocation of our resources. And that's not something that's unique to Rawlins.
But-
It's the same across the board. Not an excuse.
No.
But if we're going to address businesses on the east end that have tons of cars on their property, that's a labor-intensive, long-term project. If we're going to do weeds, that's fine, but we have to figure out what the priorities are and what direction we want to go in, while at the same time being responsive to all complaints that come in.
But my point is this, if we don't have the resources and we're not going to have the resources, then we need to back off on the ordinances. Because I don't like the complaint-triggered ordinance enforcement, because if you live by a bunch of yahoos over here, you get by with murder. And if you live by a bunch of snobs over here, you don't get by with anything. And you're both running under the same set of rules, and therein lies the problem that we get smashed with. So we've got to look at that too. Councilman Weisenberg, and then you.
Yeah, you had said earlier, like, who's responsible for what? I just am curious as why is not all of them responsible for it at the same time? Why cannot an officer not do some of this too if there's a little bit of time? They're sworn in officers to do the same. I get that's your
It's-
job, but why can't someone else
It's a good
help?
question. The answer is they can. However, is that what we want them doing? The officers are running from call to call, from 911 call to 911 call. In between that, they're enforcing traffic to ensure traffic safety and pedestrian safety. Other reasons involve logistics. Brian is full-time Monday through Friday where he can get in touch with the homeowners. The officers are working 24/7. They're working weekends on, weekends off. They rotate between days and evenings. So for them to get involved, for example, with a derelict vehicle on private property, where now it's going to take literally weeks, if not months, to determine who owns the property, to send the registered letter, to receive the call from the, it's not the direction that the officers should be going in when their primary responsibility is public safety. Can they? Yes. When the derelict vehicle is on public property, on a public street, that's an easy thing for them to address. To say, okay, in between running 911 calls and in between enforcing traffic to make sure that everybody driving on our streets is safe, in between patrolling and looking for suspicious behavior, would you please go over and deal with the weeds on this property and we're not sure who owns it, is probably not the best use of what the officers should be doing. Could they be doing it? Yes. But I'd rather have them.
I'm not saying they have to do the investigation part of anything to figure it out, but there could be some sort of handoff, I believe, in that aspect of things, to your code enforcement officer.
Councilman Martinez.
I got two things. One is, I'd like to ask this council that we work in putting another code enforcement person on. Secondly, it sounds like to me that there's a lot of paperwork involved in this. Maybe we need somebody else sitting in the office typing up all these things, that letters to the residents or to whoever, while the code enforcement people are out on the field. That's my take. I might be wrong, I don't know, but I do know that another code enforcement person would help a lot.
Wendy?
I would like to make one clarification. Mr. Mayor, you said that if we have ordinances that we can't enforce, we need to get rid of them. I believe it's more appropriate to say that they can be enforced, they just can't be enforced quickly. There is nothing in Title 8 that cannot be enforced. It just cannot be done quickly.
Well, I know what you're saying.
Okay.
And I know how I probably came off, and that isn't really what I meant. But what I mean to say is, if the workload, if you've got a 2 tons an hour dumping on your desk and you have the ability to get rid of a half a ton an hour, you're gonna get buried. So what do? You slow down that. And how you slow that down is by more lax ordinances possibly.
And there
Or,
is a point where it moves from code enforcement to me. Once he has done everything he possibly can and has no further remedies, it comes to me and I take it through the court system. So if he can get a hold of somebody, great, he can probably get it handled. But for these property owners who live out of state or are not easily reached, that's where it comes to me and I have to start doing publication and notification and court dates.
right, but what I'm saying is if we can ease that workload and not hurt the city by relaxing some of our ordinances, I'd like to know that too. You know, because there are some that might be redundant or not needing enforced anymore. Times change.
Okay.
Sean?
Just wanted to speak to the fairness issue just for a second. I think we're not gonna be able to resolve that fairness equity issue until we have that second code enforcement officer, because I think and please correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but most of what you do is in response to people, to complaints, and it's a lot less time on just proactive, I'm gonna go and do this. So, but by the time, if we can get another code enforcement officer, then the council could say, this quarter, we wanna hammer on derelict vehicles, or this quarter, we wanna, whatever it is, and then we're gonna go hit the whole city and be proactive about it. That's kind of my thought. I think it's gonna be hard to get out of that, the reactionary fairness thing until we get that second person.
I know
what do
the
you guys
county
think?
had complaint-driven zoning for a long time, and it was so unbelievably unfair, depending on where you lived, what neighborhood you live in Rawlins. If they're tolerant, if everybody likes 4 motors in the front yard, then you can have 4, but
That we need another person with a machine that sits there and types all these reports that our code enforcement mentioned that he has to get done too. So that if we had somebody doing that, then we wouldn't have to worry about the code enforcement. He could be out doing the field work. And so that's my take, and I don't know if I can sell that or not.
I think it's
that would be something we would expect somebody to bring us a proposal of.
That's something I kind of want to, maybe we could talk about it internally, is there a way to automate the process a little bit more? And that's something we could look at.
Councilman Weisenberg?
Yeah, we're talking about a second code enforcement officer, and I understand there's a need and everything else, but where are we gonna get the money to pay a code enforcement officer? We gotta come up with, what, $200,000 close to it, or 100,000, 150,000, and that's not just a one-time thing, that's annually at the bottom line of the budget, and it's increased every year that way.
Stop
So
buying
it's,
trucks and cars.
so, well, let's figure out where we can come up with money before we ever say, we're gonna get one.
May I say one thing in closing? So Brian, you've been in your position for how long? Is it 2 years, November?
Yes.
Okay. Brian is an excellent city employee. On top of the fact he's a nice guy and a gentleman. If I could clone Brian, and you said we'd like to have another code enforcement officer, I would clone Brian, and that would be my second code enforcement officer. Brian has not charged anybody during his tenure here. And the reason for that is because he has gained compliance from every citizen that he has dealt with. Going through this lengthy process, identifying the homeowners, sending out the letter, and then working with them has been 100% successful for him. Not maybe 100%, but close to it. So in working with our citizens, he has gained their compliance to voluntarily rectify or fix whatever violation they've had. We haven't charged anybody as of yet. And if I was in Brian's shoes, I know that I'd feel a little bit uncomfortable with the attention on me specifically and the work I was doing. Brian's an excellent employee and he's doing an excellent job, and I appreciate the hell out of him.
I recognize him as doing a great job. I do.
And I do too, and I just think that listening to him, seems like to me that another code enforcement person would be the way to go. Plus, somebody sitting in the office doing this paperwork that he just mentioned that he has to do on top of being a code enforcement person. And I think that would help him a lot too.
One question I have, since Ariel is here and whatnot to answer this, but when people do building permits, I get so many calls on people who are building things that don't have their permit posted.
So
And-
that is something that we're addressing right now. You did.
I can hear you, but
So, that is something that we are addressing now after we got that email and complaint, to have that posted notice in their window and to make it visible from the street. So you do know they obtained that permit and it was, in compliance with our municipal code and the international building code. I have worked with the fire department on printing a permit list for them so they know what job sites have those permits, and it went through the plan review process and was issued. So if they see something else going on, they'll notify me and I'll go over there and take care of it.
when will all that take effect? Because I've got people on my side of town that are just raising all kinds of hell.
So when you sent that email, I was out on vacation, so when I got back, we talked about it on Monday, and that's when we made it effective. Is Blaine talked to the fire guys and said, hey, this is what we're gonna run down and do and help Ariel out, because I can't be everywhere at once. I do drive from point A to point B to do my inspections and everything, and I try to notice
Sure.
those items as well when I'm out in the field, but with them going to calls and everything and on their free time, they can help me out a lot as well.
There's just a couple of them that are right there super visible that they just don't have them visible. And I looked on the way here tonight and they still don't. And
Right, do you think it might be better, because we do a half sheet of 8 by 11, what if we did a bigger posting? Like-
no, you have to have one that they aren't in the window. It's
At
not
all?
because I'm old and I can see what I'm telling you.
I'm just
No,
asking,
I'm
because
telling you.
sometimes I look
No.
for it and can't notice it either.
No, they're
depending-
there. I know what I'm looking for. I know exactly
Okay.
what they look like, and there's 2 places down there that don't have them, haven't had them. And in the old days when they didn't post their building permit, like the thing said, then you pull the permit.
Right,
And so, we need to
That's the answer.
fix some of these things,
That's the
because
answer,
there's
yeah.
2 of them that are just super blatant. It couldn't be more in line of sight on South Side, and I get phone call, I got some today.
Okay,
And I think that's the answer. When you issue the permit, you tell them, you gotta post this somewhere where it's visible, otherwise we're gonna
It is
stop
on
your-
there.
We're gonna
It's on
stop your
Right,
job.
It is on that
Oh,
form.
I don't know.
They
Yes.
sign a piece of paper that says that.
You do
Councilman Weisenberg?
sign a paper when you get a building permit, and it does say that it has to be posted visible. So I understand that, I've had them,
Me too.
But what's the repercussions of this? Obviously, they have a couple areas they're dealing with, but I've seen multiple myself. What's the repercussions? Building fence on weekend and it's not even permitted to be done. What are we doing? What's the repercussions for them people doing that? That's what I want to know, so everybody else knows what's going to happen to them.
right, so, I have had a few situations where people do work without the permit. I make contact with those individuals. A lot of the time, it's property owners that are doing this, and our code doesn't really outline what disciplinary actions I can take with property owners doing their own work, other than it wasn't permitted, it wasn't inspected, it didn't meet code, or it does, and I can request them to take it down, but then I'm gonna have a process with the court, because that's going to cut into their finances and all that good stuff. If I'm like, okay, take this down, we gotta make sure your post holes were deep enough, or I need to make sure that barrier was behind there, or whatever. I can tell you with my contractors that I work with, they are in compliance 100% with pulling their permits, obtaining their inspections, and all of that. So it's these private property owners that are running around doing that. And I don't know if there's something we need to address in our municipal code and work with the city attorney on that, but I do make contact with those individuals, and
I think
At
that's
minimum,
what we
can't
need to
you
do.
make them buy a permit?
so I have done that in the past, is require them to come in, fill out the building permit application, do their site plan and everything, and then pay the permit. But in turn, I can't final out that thing saying, okay, those post holes were deep enough, or anything, because then I put my name on a document saying I inspected
Right.
something that I didn't see.
I
So-
understand that, but once they like illegally build a shop or whatever, and
Okay.
you catch them and they have to buy a building permit, isn't that where the county assessor gets their information
Yeah,
from? I
100%.
mean, that would, in my eyes, that would be the purpose for you following through to make them buy a permit so that they're taxed properly, so they're not cheating the town further.
Right, correct. And that, we do that, just so you are aware. We
Okay.
do that. What happens behind closed doors and I can't see, that happens, but
There's
when
cheaters.
it's visual, I can go in and address that, and I do get a lot of complaint-oriented things regarding that, so.
Councilman Martinez?
I recently had a complaint about a person that built the house, and the house, he's within his right-of-way. There's not a problem. It's a beautiful home. Matter of fact, even with his addition, it's a beautiful home. But the addition, I'm sure, doesn't meet what we say. You can't add on a porch after they meet their setbacks. You build a house, and then all of a sudden, oh, I think I'm gonna have a porch, and you go out in the front yard and add a porch to it. You can't do that. I was stopped for that.
Correct, so,
I was stopped. I wanted to move my garage even with my porch. They said, no, you gotta move it back even to where the house is. But anyway, having said that, I like the house. I don't think it's hurting the community.
but we do have ordinances, setbacks, and all of that stuff we do want to follow too, so our town looks uniformed, and I get what you're saying as well.
But I don't see us having this man spend that kind of money with a beautiful porch and have him tear it down after he builds it. We need to get it before he starts.
You and me are different.
You know, the thing is people have to abide by ordinances and codes, and no matter what it is, you have to treat people fairly. Just because one gentleman's porch is not to code and it's beautiful, don't mean that they shouldn't be treated the same as other individuals.
It should have been stopped before.
It should have been, but it didn't happen, and they still should be treated the same and equal to every other person.
I agree.
And that's
Get a
where the
variance
legal
or tear
aspect
it down.
comes in. We would have to go through a legal process to
Well, he
take care of
came
that.
through a variance of some kind
Wendy?
with a change.
Not to contradict Ariel, this is something I probably failed to educate her on, and I will talk after this, so this is not you. There is an enforcement tool that can be done. Zoning is one of the people that we have authorized to write citations for violations. So for zoning violations, there is a general provision zoning fine for failure to obtain a special use permit and for any zoning violation. There is a penalty of a citation with a fine, which then brings it into criminal court. And this also falls under the every day of non-compliance means another fine. So we can take immediate steps. If we go and we say, you're not displaying the permit or you're working without a permit, you either cease and desist or we give you the citation, and every day that you do not fix this or get a permit or whatever, it's another day, it's another violation. So that is on me for not educating her about that, but there is a process where we can actually make contact and enforce the zoning requirements as well. and permitting.
Sure. Well, and it isn't a matter of who's whatever. We're sharpening our tools.
Yes.
And that's what we're doing. And that's how I look at these kind of meetings. And I just want to be able to do better. And if we can play a part in that, then y'all need to let us know. We're going to have to hurry up here and take a break. Sean?
I know most of the time it's been kind of on writing code enforcement. I know that Ariel and Blaine prepared a similar kind of presentation. Would there be a desire from the council to have a work session another time where we could jump into this a little bit more? Just
Yeah, I'd like to have a better understanding of how they go about doing their business. I think it's great. So, yeah, Dan, yeah. So if we can, I will recess this work session and take a break and get ready for the meeting.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
We're gonna stay live with sound.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I guess my thinking is that I was building something.
Sorry, I was trying to we are part of
I added something. Now wait till I get it all fixed.
But if they didn't know,
Well, they were expecting it in the house.
well, but if there was a building permit at that house, but if you just built it and then later on add, how would they know?
I think he got a permit. I'm sure he did. But
you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
If they had seen it,
I can give you the laptop if you
Yes, ma'am. Hi, Linda.
Hi, I have you all on Zoom, but in order to vote, will I need to go to the phone? How do I do that?
Just go to the board docs like you were here.
Pardon?
Just go to board docs and log in like normal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All
board.
right, I'll just,
Well, you can leave Zoom open, but then open a board docs on the internet.
Okay.
The detailing it in a way,
That's like
structure type things.
Can you get that through the wire? Can you get COVID through the wire? She can get on board.
Yeah, she can get it.
Yeah, and that's all she has to do. And then just
And just
watch
make sure
it.
she's logged in.
And then
You know,
she's,
like where it's you instead of.
yeah, and then she's listening. And then if she's logged in, she'll say online voting and it'll pop up. She hits it.
Yep. But if you've never done it before, it's one of those things
Yeah,
that's.
and I know. Well, I tried it once and I didn't like it. It's hard to hear.
Well, I think we got it better now. I think.
Here and hard to get into conversations. You know,
Yeah.
I think being here face to face, yelling at the mayor and yelling at me, you know.
Well, we did, since we split the YouTube off of the Zoom, I think it's gotten better.
Yeah.
I don't think it's perfect, and it's definitely not the same. But yeah, I think we had the tech, because so many things were all going through the same line.
My wife says the only thing I hear is when you guys leave and you leave the mics on, you guys keep talking. So I'm careful what I say.
You got it. Did you get logged in, Linda?
Well, I work on 4 jobs, yeah, but I'm on, I don't have the news thing available for the Zoom.
Are you? Well, is it 2 different tabs, or is Zoom open as an application?
I don't have the Zoom.
Aaron, are you there?
Did you have a burger?
I'm wondering if Aaron can give us some insight, because he does this more.
You're in violation of the ordinance.
You have Zoom. Is Zoom like a separate little button at the bottom, or is it on
Hey, you did good.
the same thing as Board Docs?
Hopefully we get you some help. Well, the bigger,
Do you have an iPhone?
if you had a 3-member department, even 4 would help, but 3 is fine. You had a gal that sits there and you come in and you say, I need to have
Do
this.
you have your phone with you?
I know that, I know that.
Okay, I'm gonna step out of the hall and call you.
Yeah.
Okay?
And I point things out based on calls to me. But I also realize there's certain times that they call more. Election year is the time that they call for everything. You know, and so I try not to get involved with so I have to tell them that my job is not to report people. I said, I'm doing my job. But if they would call you, okay, then I tell them, but if they would call you, right? This is, I don't enforce this. You need to call this department.
Well, and that's why I wanted to reiterate that.
And it's hard to get them to do that.
Because that's the most efficient way for me to keep track of stuff and stay on it. If it goes through 1, 2, 3 different people, like I said, I just saw the other
That's right. And they're just, it's a habit. I'll call my counsel, okay? And I try to explain to them that, yeah, in a nice way, I'll do what I can, but it's very important that you call that department.
in their frame of mind, going to do this, they think they're going to get better results.
I had a police department issue.
To coming to me, you know, where they get that probably end
I had a police department issue at 3 in the morning. Okay, this guy keeps blah, blah, blah. my answer to him is okay.
I'm sorry.
I'll look into it. I'll have to visit with the chief. When I wake up, I'll go visit with the chief. And then I had the chief call him and call me down. And that's how I handled that one. But I'm not a police officer. I don't even know enough police officers. I might know a couple. Yeah, now we're getting new ones.
But I do appreciate it.
Okay, you got it.
I do try to.
Yes, I'm not blasting you. I'm not trying to make. I just try to emphasize what things happen on my side.
Well, and like I told Sean, you know, I come from a business management and banking management background. So my
No,
thing is
she is
more
talking to
detail.
Myra in the conference room, trying to get something squared away.
Anyway, I didn't even hear it, and I'm sorry, I saw a video.
You know, if there's ways that they can be, you know, redefined or things that take shortcuts on or do whatever, then I would, you know, I mean, I'll take any advice.
But if we're lacking in an ordinance that you would like to see or have, it's important that you relay that to us so we can make the changes that you want.
I think me, the chief, Sean,
I think that's really important because things change over the years. Some ordinances don't fit anymore.
well, people change.
So, yeah.
We're trying to change behavior.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, not just laws, we're trying to come to change their behavior.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, you got
You have a
it.
good night.
You bet.
Have you started with email?
It's, but it helps to, I don't
So I can see
know,
with this. Linda's
do this too, yeah, it's just like, it's just a universal process.
Okay, Lynn's getting it turned on.
Yeah. It informs us to be able to.
We're just seeing if you can join the meeting when she starts it.
Logan's on his
first date.
Oh, gosh. How's that go?
I don't know. He went to the movies with her.
It started.
My son's on his first date.
Are you like bugging him?
No, well, I'm bugging. I bugged Garrett a little bit. Not him.
He had to chaperone him over?
He had to drive him.
Hey, don't be holding hands.
He's so shy, and this girl really liked him. My little niece, she was on the volleyball, doing a volleyball camp, and she's like, well, I know these girls. That girl likes you. And she's like, you need to go ask her out. I've done all the work for you. And I was like, he's never going to go and ask her out.
No.
Just tell her to add him on Snapchat, and he'll talk to her that way. So she added him.
Oh,
on
really?
Snapchat.
Well, that sounds like Rachel, his sister, and Josh. They weren't going to the dance because they didn't have dates. I said, well, your friends go together. So we're driving them up there. Well, I'm telling them they're about to bend all the doors out of my car. And I said,
Is there more water,
Kim
Sean?
dance. And Josh turned around and said, shut
Some more water?
There's a water.
That water fountain does
It
bottles.
sounds like
Oh.
But they live 2 hours.
It's a little too late for that.
They weren't going to go. I'm like, yeah, you're going.
It's all
You're
good.
just going with her.
my middle child has already had a girlfriend.
Not shy. That's the one you got to worry about.
Oh, he's awful. But my oldest is so shy. So shy.
I think her husband kind of was too, wasn't he?
2 girls, yeah.
Yeah,
His longest relationship before he was 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Get out.
He was smart.
So he went, you're the one that turned him.
It's a good
I have a
reading.
resolution that needs to be signed.
Okay.
It's from the previous special meeting we had.
It's funny because my
Okay.
son,
What is it?
her husband, same age, and partners in crime.
She likes signing in the.
I like to sign the fancy books.
Good luck.
They're pretty.
They are pretty.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I was thinking of something, you know, we go to these, I went to this.
Do you have another water over there and get?
It'd be nice if we had
I know, I'm waiting on him to give me one of his waters.
Just still.
Oh, that was a great idea.
Thanks.
You didn't take my cold one, that's all I got another cold one there.
Okay. I don't care if it's cold or warm, water's warm.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Ding, 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 ding.
Oh, that'd be really good. Yep. All right, is everybody ready?
Yeah.
All right, I'll call this meeting to order. It is 7:30. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Join us, I mean. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next thing on our agenda is roll call, please.
Yes. Mayor Terry Wycombe,
Present.
Vice Mayor Jacqueline Wells,
Here.
Councilmember Aaron Durst. Thank you. Councilmember Daryl Gardner.
Here.
Councilmember Davari Martinez.
Here.
Councilmember Linda Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Chris Weisenberg.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next thing on our agenda is to approve the agenda. Vice Mayor Wells.
I move to approve the August 16, 2022 City Council agenda as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded to approve the August 16, 2022 City Council agenda as presented. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please open online voting.
Online voting is open. Online voting is closed. The motion passes with 7 yeas.
All right, thank you. Next thing is approval of the minutes. Councilman Garner.
I move to approve the City Council regular meeting minutes of August 2nd, 2022 as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded to approve the City Council regular meeting minutes of August 2nd, 2022 as presented. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, would you please open online voting?
Online voting is open. Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 7 yeas.
All right, thank you. Next thing on our agenda is approval of the minutes of August 10th. Councilman Martinez.
I'll make a motion to approve the August 10th, 2022 special council meeting minutes.
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded to approve the August 10th special council meeting minutes as presented. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please open online voting.
Online voting is open. Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 6 yeas and 1 abstain. Councilmember Durst abstained.
The next thing on our agenda is public comment. This is a time when anybody, any citizen can get up and speak to us about anything that is not on the agenda. There is a 5-minute time limit, but if you would like to address the council in any way, please say so now. Okay, seeing none, I will move on to a proclamation. And this is a proclamation from the city of Rawlins, Wyoming. A proclamation recognizing American Clean Power Week. August 15th through 19th, 2022. The benefits of wind energy as a renewable energy source and the importance of the industry as a major economic driver for the city of Rawlins, county of Carbon, and state of Wyoming. Whereas clean energy makes up nearly 14% of the nation's electricity generation and provides enough clean energy to power over 57 million homes. And whereas clean energy powers our state's economy as well, driving more than $6 billion in total capital investments to date and providing millions of dollars in annual tax payments, benefiting from local governments and the state. And whereas wholesale wind power plants, independent power producers, are among Wyoming's largest non-mineral property tax payers. And whereas Carbon County is the home of Wyoming's largest existing wind power plant and the home of the Wyoming's largest under construction wind power plant, and whereas in 2020, Carbon County was home to 2/3 of Wyoming's total online and under construction wind power capacity, as is currently the home of over 1,000 megawatts of existing wind power capacity, and whereas our cities, counties, and states, all of the above, support of clean energy has proven to be a key component to our economic growth, and with continued investment, we can remain in the forefront of energy innovation and development. Therefore, I, Terry Wycombe, Mayor of Rawlins, do hereby proclaim the week of August 15th through 19th, 2022 as American Clean Power Week, and encourage citizens to learn more about the benefits of wind energy on our community and celebrate Wyoming's growing leadership in renewable energy production and employment. In witness thereof, I have hereto set my hand and caused the official seal of City of Rawlins, Wyoming to be affixed this 16th day of August 2022. All right. Thank you. Shane, I would like to introduce you, Shane Cybrell. Let's see, is that right? Yeah, you're okay. Cyril, sorry. He's a regional business manager for Rocky Mountain Power. He would like to say a few words.
Yes, I'd just like to, on this day of the Clean Energy Proclamation, voice Rocky Mountain Power's gratefulness for you, Mayor, and the council, and also the community. These partnerships have been a huge focus for our success within the county. Obviously, Rawlins is the heart of our biggest investments as Rocky Mountain Power, and we would just like to voice our gratitude for all that you have done and for past and future projects as we continue to push forward in our renewable push.
Well, thank you for saying that. We appreciate your presence also. And we have lights.
And hopefully we keep it that way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
And at this time, I would like to introduce another gentleman here. He's from France, and his name is Alex. He's a reporter here to do a story on us a little bit here in Carbon County. And so, Alex, thank you for coming to the meeting. I appreciate it. You're welcome. All right. So, the next thing on our agenda is on the Board of Adjustments. Councilman Durst, do you have anything to report?
There is a meeting next Tuesday at 5:30.
All right. The next thing on our agenda is Carbon County Council of Governments, which I'm the representative on, and we have not had a meeting since the last time we talked, and I will let you know when we do. And DDA Main Street, Councilman Smith, I guess Pam can take your place.
Yes, thank you.
Honorable Mayor and Council, thank you. So just wanted to give you a couple of recaps and some look-tos. Latino Heritage Celebration, I think we had a great event Friday and Saturday night. I was not able to attend Friday night, but I hear that you guys had a good event. And then Saturday was put on by Rawlins Music Academy and others, DDA assisted, but I also want to thank the Parks Department for all the additional trash cans. We definitely needed them, and cleaning the bathrooms and all those keys. So I think on Saturday, DDA and the city was the logistics component of the event. So that went really well. Tomorrow we have a Start Your Own Business class at the Hub from 5 to 6:30, and the SBDC will be putting that on. So we have about 6 people already signed up for tomorrow night. So if there's anybody out there that would like to listen to Jim Drever from SBDC. Also last week, the city, the PD, and the Hub had a job fair. It was the second job fair, and it went really well. And Myra did a great job stepping in for Stephanie, or all of us working together. So that was last week. Passion and Pride, there will be a big announcement tomorrow about a little change up. Passion and Pride, we changing things, moving forward. So look for the announcement tomorrow. The next thing, October 7th, is Art Beat. And that'll be a Friday night. Last year it was packed streets. It was fun. We did not close the streets. We just had people all over, and we had food trucks, and that'll be from 4 to 8 p.m. Again, Friday, October 7th. Art Beat. And then the last thing, I wanted to let you know that I'm working with a local contractor to get those bricks laid around the clock.
Thank you.
So, yes, that's been on my list.
Great report.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next thing on our agenda is Rawlins Planning Commission, Councilman Weisenberg.
Yeah, we had a meeting that was canceled last week. Not sure when the next one's gonna come. We do have it might be the one Councilman Durst had mentioned too, for a joint meeting. I won't be attending that. I'll be out of the state, but it's for the Title 19 stuff for fencing, and that'll come before council after all this stuff too.
Thank you. Next thing on our agenda is Urban Systems Committee, Councilman Garner.
We have a tentative meeting either November 6th or November 7th was our next one.
All right, thank you. Next thing on our agenda is City Manager and Staff Reports. Okay, turn the floor over to you, Sean.
Thank you. There are going to be a few staff reports. I've asked if Cody could come. He had a visit from workers' comp today, and the individual that came out here had something that was really kind of cool to say. Let Cody talk about that.
Honorable Mayor, Council. So with a lot of inspections we've been having this summer with everybody, OSHA was one of them. They did a walkthrough, and we need to do a little bit of training work. So we reached out to State of Wyoming Department of Workforce Services, Worker Compensation and Safety at Risk, and we had a walkthrough today with our facilities. And basically he's a buffer between OSHA and municipalities. So it's been 3 years since he's actually been to municipality and actually done a walkthrough through our facilities. We spent most of the day hitting most of our facilities, and he was quite impressed with our facilities and the way we are set up. He helped us look for certain things. We did have a couple nicks, but it was very small stuff, labeling bottles, electrical problems, which we all know we have problems in these old buildings, but very, very minor stuff. And in the fact that we're working with the workers' comp people right now, as soon as we're in compliance with them, they actually open up a door for training, for safety, equipment, all kinds of stuff, and it's all free to the city. So all we got to do is call and set up some kind of training, be it safety, any kind of health, any kind of training that they can offer. It's a free class. They just show up and help train us. But it was just a really good walkthrough today, knowing that, as hard as we've been working, we're staying really close to compliance. He says, it's old buildings. This is pretty common. So it was a really nice walkthrough with them today.
Awesome.
So I would like to just keep bringing them in annually and just having walkthroughs and just keeping in good compliance with these people. And I think it'll help us with training and the future for safety around here.
Heck yeah.
Cool. I guess while you're up here, maybe we'll have you and Austin talk about giving a water update.
Okay. Basically, I'll let you start with the project. You're on the projects.
Okay, sounds good. Honorable Mayor, City Council, so I'd just like to give you an update on the current affairs regarding our project. So we are in the process still of moving forward with the pretreatment plant project, where right now we have essentially all of our testing almost complete, if I'm correct.
Yeah, operations-wise, we're looking really, really good. Now we got to get all the SCADA systems and the operations part tied in together and making sure that it's working correctly.
Right, and then in that we still have some facilities things that we're working on to keep moving forward, some things that were required by the consultant that we do before we keep moving on. So there's more work to be done internally as well. So with that, we don't have an anticipated startup time of the pretreatment. At this time, I just don't have the information that we need to make any kind of decisions. We're still waiting on the engineer's recommendations for chemicals and the processes. But Kruger, Veolia, formerly Kruger, did come from the East Coast and did an overview of our system and looked at our different pumps and our motors and looked at how the system was operating compared to its original intent, and just did a checkup on the system when we have a report forthcoming. Then finally we have the Sage Creek Basin Springs project. The 10,000 feet of pipe is currently connected in 3 locations to the system, and during this week we're focused on spring boxes 11, 12, and 13 with some fairly substantial change orders that are low cost. It's a big change of scope, but it's not a major cost increase. So with that, we were able to use some of our existing materials that we had on hand, like there is a 4-foot basin that we're going to include in the project and has already been delivered to the site. And we have a couple more basins that we might be able to use in the future to make those improvements where the vaults have lifted up out of the ground from buoyancy. So with that, we're moving forward. I expect in the next week or two to finish up our connections. The contractor is eager to wrap up the work, and then we also have some revegetation efforts that we need to consider and look at and focus on what areas we need to revegetate in terms of the transmission line and the disturbance there. So in that, we're going through a punch list. We did a walkthrough on, it was yesterday afternoon, and we are going through it right now, and hopefully we'll be wrapped up in the next month. So.
All good news.
Yeah, great.
Councilman, or Vice Mayor Wells, sorry.
How's our tank levels looking?
Tank levels, this August has been kind of a hard one, and I got to give it to Mr. Michael Bryan over there for doing really hard work on trying to keep everybody in control around town. He's been really working hard to try to give out warnings and keep people educated and in compliance. Our tank levels they're not the greatest, but we're sticking around 50-60%, and we kind of figured that we would drop down in August. We're hoping we got about another maybe a month at the most of really hard times, hot weather, to where everybody will start easing up on their watering. But we're staying right in there in that low but okay realm. So
I have to tell you something funny. A friend of mine was referred to some city folks as the water Nazis. And then I read his name on the list that got a warning, and I know exactly where that came from. I laughed so hard. Anyway, sorry, I just had to tell you that.
But also in this month, we've been having a lot of walkthroughs. We had the EPA walk through our water treatment plant. They did a walkthrough to see how our systems were doing after the March event. They wanted to make sure that we're running our facilities correct. I'm going to give it to Stevie Osborne. She did a great job, and they were actually really pleased with our system. There's a couple things that we need to fix that we already know are bad, but they're very costly fixes, but they're very small in comparison to everything else. So we know we need to take care of a couple things, but the EPA is very, very happy with us too. So
oh, that's good news.
We had a good walkthrough with EPA, DEQ, so far workers' comp. So far in all these things that we've getting drilled on this summer within the last month, we're looking really, really good as a city. So they're very impressed with us.
So am I.
Well, thank you, sir.
I am. Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is obviously controversial, but I think it needs to be brought up. And I think that the city is doing everything that we can to reduce our liability to the water infrastructure that we have. And we had gone through and looked at some previous sales of water in town and found that there was a user who was selling water.
Oh, yeah.
From the city, not from the city, but it was a local business, and they had been encouraged, if I'm not mistaken, in the past to do that. And we've come to a juncture where we realize that in the city ordinances, that a private business is not allowed to resell city water. And so what we've done is asked that the business not do that. And this is really critical here, is that there are so many construction projects associated with this particular meter that if anybody is aware of any construction projects that are impacted by shutting off that meter, to notify Public Works immediately, and we can begin working on an alternative source of water. And I know that the transmission line project that is south of town that's currently under construction was using almost 1 million gallons a week of treated water for dust mitigation. And so what I've done is I've stepped out and reached out to that particular contractor, and we are going to be selling water that is raw water, not treated water, from water that we had pumped up to Atlantic Rim in anticipation of firing up the pretreatment plant. And since we are halfway through our irrigation season, I feel very comfortable with selling raw water to the transmission company, and it's closer for them for hauling water. So it's something that they're interested in, but right now they're having to go, since that meter was effectively shut off for water sales, they're having to be they have to be reapproved by BLM to be able to use our raw water, as according to the project manager. So with that, there's going to be a little bit of a process, and hopefully the amount of time that they don't have water is not going to impact their project schedule.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Weisenberg?
And do we not have a water right that is allowed for that off of the plat? I know we had sold water last year for road construction to the state. We had an agreement. So I do know we do have a water right that is allowed for that. So we need to probably check into that also.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. And by the way, too, Atlantic Rim was also partially filled with spring water as well. So there's a certain amount that is from the river, but some that is the other right as well.
But it's not been through the treatment plant.
Correct.
Good. Yeah, I saw that going on, and it had already been reported. And
right.
Yeah, big deal. Thank
So
you.
Any questions, anytime you want to collaborate, let us know. So,
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I asked if Mike Ward would come up for a second. We had a dangerous, dilapidated, and derelict building work group today, and I thought he could touch on a couple things there.
Thanks, Sean. So a few months ago, we formed a dangerous, derelict, and dilapidated building workforce. It includes the fire department's building inspection, the fire department, code enforcement, police department. Several council members have attended. Our grant manager, city attorney, public information officer, and the DDA. So we're looking at the buildings in Rawlins that are meeting those descriptions, that are a threat to public safety, they're eyesores, and so forth. We're looking at it from all the different angles. That's why those different people are involved. Today was the second meeting of that group. Councilmember Martinez was there. At the last meeting, Councilmember Weisenberg and Martinez were both there. So at one point I had spoken to you about the collaboration between code enforcement and building inspection, and the fact that they were going to make a target list with checks checked categories where they can rate and assess these buildings so that we can prioritize our response to them, plus defend what we're doing by saying, listen, two of our experts, our professionals went out there. These are the things that they could see clearly from the street. This property has all of the checks checked, so we're starting with that property. Brian from Code Enforcement and Ariel from Building Inspections have created that list and shared it with us today. We had some discussions on some other topics involving grants to help some of the historic buildings that are currently unoccupied become better buildings and so forth. We had a legal update on some of the things and some of the processes that the city can legally take to improve some of these buildings and properties. And we're moving forward. Our next meeting is going to be on October 6th.
Sorry I couldn't make that one today. I wanted to really bad, but I'm going to really, really try to make the next one.
The invite will include all the council.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I just have one other update. There's a company that was in Saratoga that I heard through the grapevine that did low-income housing. They would build low-income housing in kind of groups of those homes. And one of the things that I had heard is that they had zero interest in coming to Rawlins, and that bugged the heck out of me. So I called them and I told them to come over to Rawlins and meet with me. And I brought in some reinforcements of staff. And what I mentioned this because at the end of the meeting, they said that they were interested in looking at Rawlins now.
Oh,
and
great.
it was just, they don't get to say things like that. So anyway, it was a good meeting. That's all we have there.
Good. All right. Attorney report? City attorney report?
So today I have news that is not what I normally get to report. I have happy news, and I'm very excited about it.
You're scaring
me. The judge has authorized me and requested that I work with the school district to offer defendants who have fines up to, if they are willing to buy supplies that teachers need that they normally have to supply out of their own pockets. We have a list coming from the school. If they buy up to $50 on that list, the court will match dollar for dollar so they can get up to $100 off their fines after they show that they have bought the supplies and made the donation to the school. So especially with school starting, we're hoping next week we can start doing that. And hopefully, if they keep giving us the supply lists, whether it be cleaning supplies or paper or whatever it is, we're going to have a master list that defendants can choose to buy things off of that list to get fines reduced and help schools.
Oh, that's awesome.
See?
Yeah.
I don't normally get to do happy things.
Maybe they'll quit doing bad things, go back to school.
That's all I have.
All right. All right, so we have no unfinished business, so we will move on to payroll.
Mayor,
We got
Did I skip
direction from
something?
City Council.
get direction from the
Oh, I'm
city.
sorry.
That's- yeah.
Direction from city council to city manager and attorney. Councilman Martinez.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
just want to bring something up that we've talked about before. In order for us to show the people how many vehicles they bought, I'd like to see our logo on the side of all vehicles that the city owns. This is ridiculous. We got brand new trucks riding around. They look nice. They got a nice city license plate, but you really can't tell if it's just an ordinary vehicle. I want those tags on those trucks to show the public that this is what they purchased. That's it.
Can I respond? to that?
Yes, John.
The reason, so I think that's a wonderful idea that we need to advertise our stuff. The reason I haven't gone after that right at this moment is because we're doing the Y Rawlins, and in case we were to do some sort of rebranding, I don't know if we will at all, but I didn't want to slap on some new ones just to go back and have to do, tear them right back off. So that's why. But if the council feels it's important enough, we could go ahead and put them on what we have until that time. So just let me know what you guys would like,
In all due respect to the committee on why Rawlins, I'm not sold on it yet because I see too many things in our community that would say, why not Rawlins? And I would, and the first thing I would like to do is advertise to the community all the things that they've purchased in this last year or a couple of years with impact money and things of that nature. Being in Cheyenne here the other day, I went and I kind of got lost at the Frontier Days and ended up in the park, and they got these metal plaques stuck in the grass with a sign on there say paid for by the Cheyenne 1 cent sales tax. I think that's a wonderful idea to go around our parks and our infrastructure that we purchased and let people know that this is what they paid for.
Margaret, you can speak to that one, please.
Yes, so I had sent council an email, but the gist of it is that right now we're focusing on the fifth penny advertising for that to be coming up at the November election. And then I had sent an email asking for any feedback about how we should approach putting out fifth penny and sixth penny payment stuff. So I included a few examples, I think, and I just wrote down metal plaques and grass too.
Okay.
So it's just kind of a work on it next step after the fifth penny.
I appreciate that, thank you.
On the logos on the trucks, I know that if you call CJ Signs in Rock Springs, they already have it formatted. They're not that much. They're not that hard to put on, and they're not that hard to take off. I can give a quick 10-minute class on how to put them on and how to take them off, and I mean, it's still 6 months away, so I for one would like to see those back on also.
Do you know how much those cost?
You know, I don't. It's been too long ago. I did a pass-through my company, but I didn't mark them up, and I don't know. It's so many years ago, I don't know if I have records of that, but I bet they still have the artwork, because there needed to be some, it came to me it wasn't in a vectorized thing, but I can help with that too if necessary. So one way or another, I can help get them made.
If we have the vector file too.
You do?
Now.
Okay.
We do now.
And
okay.
Would the rest of the council also like us to just go ahead?
What do you think, Councilman Garner?
Either way. Yes, I think it'd be
Councilman Weisenberg?
Yeah, I think we need to do that, and we need to put the actual logo on there. I know that right now we have different departments have different ones, right? It might say Public Works or Parks and Rec, but I'd like to see them uniform across the whole board. That way, if something does get transferred through from Parks and Rec to Public Works or vice versa, there's no having to retake stuff off. It's all done uniform.
Councilman Vice Mayor Wells, what do you think?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay, so does that give you direction there? Yes, sir.
So I did actually just order some decals. I did the City of Rawlins letterhead logo, basically, that we have uniform across. I just ordered a few just to get them on some of our new trucks, and when we do the Y Rawlins, if we decide to change the logo, it's just, I got enough just for the new trucks so we can actually put logos on them right now. And that's what we're doing, we're ready. But if we end up changing them, we can actually go through and change them out all as one.
I'd like to see the antelopes, I think.
I got the City of Rawlins, so it says City of Rollins in big bold with the antelope head on it.
Oh, okay,
So-
okay.
What's the size of those?
For the big trucks, yeah. For the department head trucks, they're like 8x6s that are on the fenders.
I'd like to see something that's visible. That's some of the problem is they put them on the fender. They're literally this big, right? I mean, it's not good for the public to not be able to see that stuff.
Okay, it just, in the past, that's the way it was done. Department heads were always a little bit smaller on the vehicles, and then the actual utility trucks that are pulling up in front of your house have the big ones on it. So that's just, I just went back to the old way. So if we want to change it up in the future, absolutely will. But I have ordered logos. I got them in my office right now. And we're in the process of doing that.
Well, thank you for taking that step, and we do need to work on unifying one other thing is when these vehicles are purchased with impact assistance or whatever they're purchased by, I'm gonna suggest like a patch that goes on the fender, so when it's time to ask people to re-up for the 6 penny tax, they've seen things that were paid for by that, and instead of just
choke
down the
cherry
rabbit
and a
hole.
windmill on it. I mean, that's a lot of these vehicles are coming.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
Councilman
Just
Martinez?
one of the things is I was headed to Rock Springs. 3 of the Rock Springs vehicles were headed towards Rawlins. They had nice logos on the side of their vehicle. When I went to Cheyenne here a while back, I helped my son. Same thing, the city of Cheyenne has their logo right on the side, says Cheyenne. I think it's just really important to be out there and let the people know that we just don't buy these pickups, we need them.
Yeah.
And they paid for them.
Yeah.
And it is easier to put them on than take them off, but
Yeah.
I've got some secrets.
Yeah,
I do.
because some of the stickers, I agree, they're old, they're coming off, they look bad, and so I
Yeah.
would like to actually update all of them.
Yeah, if
So-
you have problems with those, let me know. I'm
Okay.
serious, I got a couple
Little
of
soap and
tools.
water?
No, it's called,
Okay.
several things.
Okay.
I don't give all my secrets away. The public's watching.
Trade secrets.
But I'm good at it. Sean?
Something, I don't think we brought this one up before, but I've seen this in other cities that we could, where you have the stoplights and up there, you can actually put our logo up there. So throughout town, every time you go through a street light, you're seeing City of Rawlins. It just kind of looks cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
It looks cool. That's something we might look at some point.
That'd be awesome. All right. So, is there anything else? Seeing none, we'll move on. And now we'll go to payroll. Vice Mayor Wells.
I move to approve the July 17, 2022 through July 30th, 2022 payroll register for $261,154.02.
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded to approve the July 17th, 2022 through July 30th, 2022 payroll register for $261,154.02. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please open online voting.
Online voting is open. Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 7 yeas.
All right, thank you. The next thing on our agenda is approve payroll. Vice Mayor Wells.
I move to approve the accounts payable register for the period of July 21st, 2022 to August 3rd, 2022 in the amount of $107,642.44.
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded to approve the accounts payable register for the period of July 21st, 2022 to August 3rd, 2022 in the amount of $107,642.44. Is there any further discussion? Please open online voting.
Online voting is open. Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 7 yeas.
All right, next thing on our agenda is to approve 2 new public works trucks bid. Councilman Garner.
I move to approve, or to award the 2 new public work truck bid to King Garf Automotive of Cheyenne, Wyoming in the amount of $56,310 each, totaling $112,620 for the 2 with the funds coming from Choke Cherry Impact Assistant General Fund to pay for them.
Do I hear a second? Do I hear a second?
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded to award the 2 new public works truck bid to Ken Garf Automotive of Cheyenne, Wyoming in the amount of $56,310 each, totaling $112,620 for the 2, with the funds coming from Choke Cherry Impact Assistance to pay for them. Is there any discussion? Councilman Weisenberg?
Yeah, this is gonna be just directed more so towards finance on this, the balance of this. The stuff coming out of the choke cherry, I know we've approved a lot to come out of there already. Is this gonna be already taken out of that and accounted for, so we know we're in the green on that?
Honorable Mayor, council members. Yes, the two pickups were part of the original budget to come out of the choke cherry impact assistance funds. So the funds are there and they have been budgeted and accounted for in choke cherries. So
I just want to make sure it's not going to affect after all the excess we've done for water projects. So.
Yeah, it shouldn't.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Cody, would you like to tell us about these trucks? Do they meet the specs and all that?
So when I did my bid evaluation, that was the first thing I kind of categorized them all as is, first of all, which trucks met the actual specs that we wrote out. And his trucks were the only ones that met absolutely all the specs. And we also wanted to go that route because he was the soonest that could actually deliver a date. I also went off of that one pretty heavily. It was as close as we could to a delivery date. They're within 180 to 365 days, and it goes out to a year and a half to 2 years on the rest of the ones. So I based a lot of it off, did you meet the specs and how soon can we get these vehicles? So yes, he did meet specs on the F-250s.
They're gonna be antiques before we get them. All right, any further discussion? Please open online voting.
Online voting is open. Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 7 yeas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cody. All right, next thing on our agenda is an ordinance, first reading. Vice Mayor Wells.
I move to approve first reading and waive the reading of the ordinance amending Rawlins Municipal Code Section 1054-030, license registration display.
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded to approve first reading and waive the reading of the ordinance amending Rawlins Municipal Code Section 10.54.030, license registration display. Is there any discussion? I have a question. Didn't we fix this already, or?
This is a different one. This is the first time I've addressed this one, let's put it that way. The court likened the writing of this ordinance as an attorney reading Dr. Seuss. If the judge doesn't even understand it, it's highly unlikely that the citizens do. So what I did was I took this ordinance and I modeled it closer to the state statute and wrote it in English. So this basically is just a more legible ordinance that people can understand the requirements of.
And basically it coincides with the state licensing about if a vehicle is not equipped with a front license holder.
That is
such
correct.
like that. Is there any other thing that it addresses?
This is the one that basically says a vehicle must be registered.
Okay.
So it's totally different with that, okay.
Any further discussion? Please open online voting.
Online voting is open. Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 7 yeas.
Thank you. Next thing on our agenda is to go into executive session. I don't know if this is necessary, but it'd be a heck of a time to postpone it, I guess, huh? Because I didn't get what I was supposed to get.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Do you need an executive? Okay, this is not a real good time to postpone this. Vice Mayor Wells.
I move to go into executive session at 8:14 PM per Wyoming Statute 16-4405 to consider or receive any information classified as confidential by law, and to consider the appointment, employment, right to practice, or dismissal of a public officer, professional person, or employee, or to hear complaints or charges brought against an employee, professional person, or officer, unless the employee, professional person, or officer requests a public hearing. The governing body may exclude from any public or private hearing during the examination of a witness any or all other witnesses in the matter being investigated. Following the hearing or executive session, the governing body may deliberate on its decision in executive session.
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded to go into executive session. It is 8:15. Please open online voting.
Online voting has opened. Online voting has closed. The motion passes with 7 yeas.